Hello, everyone. Welcome to Swift Academy, the podcast. Today, we have the privilege of hosting a renowned figure in the world of iOS development. Our guest is no one other than Vincent Pradeilles, a trailblazer in the iOS ecosystem, whose work has influenced and inspired countless of developers around the globe. With a career spanning, I think, 13 years, Vincent has been instrumental in shaping the way that we interact with technology through innovative application design and development. As the creator of Swift with Vincent, Vincent has demonstrated a unique ability to blend creativity with technical prowess, pushing the boundaries of what possible on the iOS platform. Hello, Vincent. How are you?
Good. Hello, Walid. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, thank you. Really a pleasure to be with you in this podcast. I think that I will begin with the first question. Can you share, please, a bit about your journey into iOS development and content creation?
Yeah. So for iOS, I started in 2011 when I was still a student. So I was doing what's called in French DUT informatique. So for
Okay.
English speakers, it's kind of like, I think it's called an associate degree. It's a 2 years degree, and you have to do an internship at the end of the second year. And
Okay.
so I found an internship in a company that was back then called Aquafadas.
Okay.
Today it's called Rakuten Developer Experience. And they
Mm.
were based in Montpellier. And they had done a lot of apps back when macOS, the core of macOS was all of the creativity applications, iLife and everything like that. So they were doing apps that were going a bit further than that. For instance, how to make animated banners for
Mm.
websites, these kind of things. And when iOS came out, they tried to, they succeeded quite well to work on the digital publishing aspect. So actually, the first apps in France where you would have comics, French comics available on the iPhone or on the iPad, they were doing them. They had
Okay,
the
great.
brand called Ave Comics that was a bit known back then, and so it was like very interesting to have this company available for internships. So I went there, and that's how I got started with iOS. So 2011, and for the content creation part, it came a bit after. First, it started around 2016, 17 with
Okay.
speaking at meetups and then conferences. And then it moved to content creation itself in 2020 with YouTube, more activity on social media. And then 2022, the website and the newsletter in 2023.
Great, great, great. But what you motivated you to share your knowledge with the community?
Um, so it's always a bit hard to give the exact motivation. Also because often you figure it out years later after you've already done it. I would say it's probably the fact that when you do content creation, you can speak to basically everyone. So
Okay.
you're not constrained by where you live, who you know. I live in France. I know that you live in France also, and you know as well as I do that in France, if you don't live in Paris, you don't have access
Mm.
to the same ecosystem. I don't.
Yes.
I didn't, and I still don't live in Paris. So I think content creation is a way to
Mm.
counterbalance that.
Yes.
And also, I think, especially in the Apple ecosystem, we have kind of the advantage that Apple, especially back then, Apple used to release the WWDC videos, and that was it. Now
Yes.
they make a bit more effort. For instance, they've released some good tutorials recently. They make a bit more effort, but back then it was the videos and that's it. And there
Mm.
was nothing to bridge the gap, and so it left quite a lot of room because we don't have, for instance, the equivalent of the Google Developer Expert
Mm.
in iOS. So that leaves room for people who want to be like, okay, what if I tried something? And of course, I should also mention there was the very good and impressive example of John Sandel, who
Yes.
is a bit less active these days, but he started to do
Sadly.
content creation around 2016, 17, and it really took off because back then he was the only one to do it with a high enough level of quality, and he reached a critical mass like crazy, and it
Yes.
showed that it was possible, it was credible, and it was like if you did it well, you wouldn't be wasting your time, basically.
Yes, yes. The great work of John Sandel, really, really amazing with articles. But sadly, they have now it's less content. But I think that really, really amazing thing that John Sandel and others,
Absolutely.
other developers make great content. Uh, Another question: what inspired you to leverage platform like I think that like LinkedIn, especially because you are very known in LinkedIn and also in YouTube to reach a global audience with your content. What inspired you, especially to work in LinkedIn and YouTube?
Yeah, so when I started, I was doing Twitter. At first, for instance, you give a talk at a conference and then you try to publish the key part of the talk as a Twitter thread. So, because Twitter was the more, I would say, tech-oriented social media platform.
Okay.
Then I moved to YouTube, and I was doing YouTube and Twitter together. And LinkedIn, actually, I started to realize that cross-posting on LinkedIn wouldn't be that hard. It also happened that in September 2022, I started using a tool called Typefully to pre-write and schedule posts for Twitter, and they added the feature to cross-post on LinkedIn. So I started to do that. And LinkedIn has one advantage is that LinkedIn's algorithm, I don't know if it's still true today, but 2 years ago it was true. It would encourage discoverability way more than Twitter, because on LinkedIn, if one of your contacts has liked a post, there is a chance that you will see the post appear in your feed. So when you think about it, LinkedIn had kind of like the virality of a TikTok, but with more qualified profiles, in the sense that it's not random people, it's people who share an interest in your topic, and people can subscribe, and you can build a community on LinkedIn, which is harder than on TikTok. So I was surprised that it worked that well, to be honest, because today
Yes.
the platform where I have the most following is LinkedIn, and by a large margin.
Yes.
So I was very surprised by that, but it shows that it's very important to experiment. And it's also a way to reduce what's called the platform risk, which became very obvious with Twitter when it was bought. Because what if the platform gets closed? What if my accounts get banned? This kind of thing. So also one of the
Yes.
reasons why I started the newsletter, because I have a list of email, and if something goes terribly bad, whatever happens, I have a list of a bit more than 3,000 emails now that I can email to say, hey, I've created a new account, here it is, and I can pick myself up thanks to that.
Okay, great. I understand now. It's a little bit of chance sometimes, and
There is always an element of, but I think when something works,
yes,
there is always an element of chance,
yes,
which might either be true, or which might just be that it takes time sometimes to understand what was really appealing in your content. That's why it's so hard to reproduce someone else's success, because you can take all of the elements. It's not guaranteed that it will have the same success. It's very hard to explain.
yes, great. Now we move to how you create your content. If I think that you have something a process, how to do you choose topics, format on your site, on LinkedIn, etc. I think that you have a process. Can you describe a little bit your process? Because every time we have, I think every in 1 week we have three content, or maybe
Yes.
three publication. How you can keep all this persistently, this consistently in the creation. I think that you have a process to do that.
Yes. So like the process, or the guideline that I try to have is to try and limit the effort, because if you put too much effort into a piece of content, that's not gonna be sustainable, and if it doesn't work, you're gonna be so disappointed. So what I try to do is first make content that is very focused on a topic, and my idea is that the content should be consumed by the reader or the viewer in 2 minutes tops. And generally, because there are ratios, if the content is to be consumed in 2 or 3 minutes, you're able to make it in 2 or 3 hours. You have this kind of ratios. So that's the first thing. I try to reuse also a lot. Typically, each video is going to get turned either into a written article if the script is written and I just need to reuse the script for the article, or if I need to if I recorded the video just speaking in front of the camera and then I need to write it down and to phrase it a bit better, then I make it a newsletter email, which also gets turned into a blog article. So that's how I try to keep things together, and I try to keep things simple. I try to also experiment a bit. For instance, be like, oh, I've seen this website which is cool. Maybe I could talk about it, not in a blog article, but maybe in a newsletter email, which is a smaller format and a format where it feels more okay to say, hey, this is my recommendation. So I would say, experiment a lot, focus your effort, and try to make it so that if the content doesn't work, in the sense that it doesn't get the success you would have hoped it should have gotten, you're not too disappointed and you still feel fine to try something else the week after.
Okay, great. Very, very great process. I think doing a little bit video or content, 2 minutes, etc. It's and the specific contents. I think it's hard. It's hard to find usually
Yeah.
the ideas, etc. And that comes for my next question. I think that you have many challenges along the way to overcome your content creation. What kind of challenge you face it, especially when you have content with 2 minutes, 3 minutes, etc., and you are very disappointed for your ideas, etc. And what challenges you face it?
So yeah, I would say the main challenge in content creation is when you reach the point where you make one video per week, for instance, and you're like,
Yes.
oh, I have to make my video, but you don't really want to. You don't have a clear idea. You don't have an exciting idea, and it feels really like a chore. Like, what the hell am I going to tell them next week? So I would say that's the
Yes.
main challenge that you want to avoid, because it's like when you're there, you're going to burn out very fast. So I would say the goal is to, when you feel like that, and it can happen to feel like that, to be okay. Let's change a few things. Let's experiment with other stuff. One of the risks also is that you find a format that works kind of nice, and then you keep reusing it, but you don't dare to try something else because you're too scared of breaking something that works, maybe not great, but still like works a bit. And that's also a challenge to reach a point where you've had a bit of success with something and it has reduced your not your ability but your willingness to take risks. So I would say like the two main challenges are that, but the solution to both is the same, is to still try to experiment. Still remember that you are making videos for free. So even if people didn't like a video, it's fine. Like they didn't pay for it. So it's not as if you'd sold a product and people had massively asked for a refund, you know. So I would say it's, yeah, try to take risk, try to test new formats. And also one thing that's super important when you test different things is that not all tests will be successful. Honestly, when I try new stuff, if 1 out of 4 tests is successful, it's already a huge success. When you do like A/B test at scale in large applications, sometimes if 1 every 10 test is successful, it's a great success, because if every successful test allows you to get a new to reach a new step in your growth. If you look at the graph of your growth and you take a step back,
Yes.
whether it's 1 every 4th or 1 every 10th, the graph will still look the same. It will just take a bit more time to take off, but then to say it in a more mathematical way, exponential of 1 over n, it's still an exponential as long as n isn't infinite. So
Yes.
it's still okay, but
Okay.
it can be demotivating because you can be like, oh, I screw up 3 out of 4 times. It's more like, no, it's 1 out of 4 times I find something really, really nice that helps me reach a new level and carries me for the rest of the year. I can give an example to make it more relatable. 1 year ago, I tried a format of videos which was called "Don't Write This Code," where
Yes.
I put a piece of code where there is something that's wrong,
Something.
whether it's a big thing or a small thing. Exactly,
Yes.
with the emojis that are like "Don't write this
Yes.
code," and
Yes.
this format worked very well. And I've kept using it over the year. I try not to use it too much because it plays on something that's called the negativity bias, and I don't want to overdo it because then it can kind of change the way that people perceive you. Like they perceive you with a bit too much of negativity. But this format worked extremely well, and I've been using it. I used to do the format also explain something in 90 seconds. It used to work very well, but at some point you reach the moment where you've covered everything that you wanted, and you're like, okay, maybe I'm going to do the one video too much. Also, one of the reasons why I stopped doing the animated GIFs with code, because it works very well, but then at some point you do one where you have comments, people are like, I'm not sure it's such a good idea, and that's your sign that you've entered a territory where you're really trying to scrape everything that you can, and you should stop there. But we are lucky that there are new features added to Swift regularly, so you can bring back, and sometimes I bring back to life old formats, because I'm like, okay, well, there is something new to talk about, so let's do it using a format that's been proven to work with the audience.
Yes, thank you. Very great strategy. I think that you respond to my next question about your strategy to effectively grow your audience, etc. And the answer of in those this strategy. Have you ever other strategy to growing your content, your community, especially other than that you describe now?
So I would say first, regularity
Regularly.
is very important. It could be, for instance, John Sundell. Back then, it was one article every Sunday, so it doesn't have
Yes.
to be every day. Definitely not. But regularity, I would say, is important. Also, something that's often overlooked, but having a nice and consistent profile picture, because people will remember that more than your name. Especially if, like me, you have a name that doesn't sound English, people will not remember your name, they will remember your profile picture. So it's important that it's very high quality, I would say, and that it looks and that it's the same on every platform that you're on.
Okay.
And then what else could I say? Try to engage with the audience. Listen to the feedback, both positive and or negative. Trying to speak also with other creators which are at the same stage of their journey can be useful. Trying to do content together. For instance, back during the days of lockdowns, I had done a few videos like you're doing, interviewing some creators.
Yes.
Then I had done live streams with creators to talk about like the news of Swift. So arguably, this was way easier to organize when people were all stuck at home, of course.
I
But
think.
trying
But
formats that you like, and it doesn't it's not, you don't have to do the same thing than what other people have done. You can explore formats. For instance, you're doing interviews of iOS developers.
yes.
I'm not doing that at all, and I
Yes.
don't think many of the like very large creators are doing that, so it's a great idea. to
Yes.
try and try to look. Actually, yeah, try to look where there is a gap and try to see how you can bridge that gap. When there is a gap, there might be two reasons. Either because it's a bad idea to go there, maybe because it's content that is very hard to do, for instance, very time consuming. So maybe there is a good reason why there's a gap, but maybe it's just because there is something that's worth doing, but no one has seen it already. Or maybe for the people who are too advanced in their journey, it's not worth the effort because they already have a schedule and everything. So it's kind of like, you know, the large company versus startup kind of paradigm. And yeah, like try new stuff, or sometimes also if something has worked very well for a creator, try to reuse it, but by adding your own twist. For instance, John Sandal, he started by posting pictures of code, and with like there were arrows, and he would say you should improve this. And I did my animated code. In a way, it was kind of the same thing. I put animation so that it didn't feel as much as if I was like reusing his format, but the core idea is the same.
I think also the choice of English also as a language for your content
Yes.
can be also very has very impactful for your content creation, because at this moment you have a very large public that you can share your knowledge with them, especially for us when you are a French speakers, etc., or maybe for because I come from Arabic countries, Tunisian countries, it's really difficult. The choice of English language as a very international language can very impactful, I think, in your strategy, and very intelligent strategy, I think. Great. That come from how you can stay updated with the iOS advancement every year. I think there is a lot of changes in our Apple platform since iOS, WatchOS, recently with Vision OS, etc. How you can be you stay updated with the last advancement changes in the Apple platform, and how to that influence your content.
Yeah. So first, it's extremely hard to keep up to date with everything. I don't think it's possible to keep up to date with the full set of updates that we get every year. So me personally, what I try to do is to start with the updates to Swift, because it's the common denominator, and it's the changes that will impact everyone in the Apple ecosystem, regardless of whether they do iOS, macOS, Vision OS. So I start with that.
Yes.
I start with that.
Okay.
Then I guess I also look at what's new in I would have said UI kit, but these days it's mostly on Swift UI that there are new things. But what's new in UI kit in Swift UI? And try to look, for instance, so you have like the big frameworks also, Swift data, but
Yes.
also when there are changes that can have an impact on the development workflow. An example I have in mind is last year, Apple added the view that generates a paywall for you if you have in-app purchases.
Yes.
In the same logic, they also added a view for empty states in list, so that you can say, oh, well, this list is empty, and you don't put a wide screen, you put this view.
Okay.
So these are very useful usually to know about, because you will likely be able to use them. Something that can be also useful, because since the new features, they are often gated by the version of iOS that you support. It's one of the advantages of focusing on Swift first, is that the features of Swift almost always they don't depend on the version of iOS. But when a feature depends on the version of iOS, it can be interesting. For instance, on the Photoroom app, we support the current and the previous version. So this means that when iOS 18 will get released, we will support 18 and 17. It makes sense to actually look at what was added in 17, because we can
Okay.
start using it. So sometimes also looking with 1 year, 2 year, or 3 years in the past can make a lot of sense. And yeah, and also accept that you will not know everything. You will not keep up to date with everything. When I look,
Yes.
I always find like new stuff to talk about. So usually you know about the general stuff, then you know about the frameworks or the APIs that you use inside of your apps. But sometimes there are APIs that have been added that are useful but not used a lot. For instance, I know, and I've forgotten the name, but there is an API in UIKit that can be super useful for when you have like child view controllers and you want them to be positioned in a way that looks super nice. I had made a video guest
Video.
with Marina from the iOS code review newsletter who had talked about it.
Okay.
And it's an API that is super useful, but since when it was released, it took a few years for people to be able to use it.
Mm.
In the end, I think, except for people at Apple and people who work on really large apps where it makes sense to really like drill down into how to optimize the app a lot. If you're working in a French service company that does app with a 6-month project calendar, you will never get to use
Yes.
these APIs. So there are always room to learn new things.
Yes, yes. Great. I think that we have the same opinion. We cannot knowing everything.
Yeah, definitely not.
Sometimes not to be a framework developers engineering, but sometimes you need to focus on something. Maybe you are very clever in Swift UI, etc. Swift UI, everything, view modifier, any animation, etc. I think it's great. Maybe you are also UI kit developers. You have a lot of experience in this. And for me, specialization it's important also, because we can be we have the same level in Swift UI kit, app kit, Vision OS, etc.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
I think that
I, yeah,
yes.
well, I just wanted to say like one thing that I would recommend also is to don't spend too much time on trying to learn the details of something that you will not be using
Mm,
or that you don't have a clear plan to use, because that's how you burn yourself out. Like for instance, learning the basics of Swift data, if you don't have a plan to use it, is fine. But
mm,
don't go into learning every intricacies if you
yes.
don't have a plan to use it, because you will probably burn yourself out. And there were probably more efficient ways for you to use your time and energy.
Yes, to focus maybe on Swift as a language,
Yeah,
to understand something that
exactly.
we use in every Apple platform. If you are good, something in generic, in genericity, etc., in how Swift may make things great, I think that you are. It will be very easy to you to work with Swift data, with observable, with
Yes,
Swift UI, etc., because the concept are the same. But
exactly.
sometimes developer have a problem with Swift concepts. At this moment, they have a problem with the framework.
Yes,
I think that there's a problem. You spoke about Photoroom, and I think it's
yes.
great company for tech in France. Very famous and great with very talented engineering. How do you balance your role as a software engineering in Photoroom and your content creation? I think it's very difficult to have this
Yeah.
consistency. Yes.
Yeah, so my content creation is something that I do on my own time. So
Okay.
it's completely separate from what I do at work. The way I try to do it, and it goes back to what I was mentioning earlier, to try to scope things out and not limit but bound the amount of effort and energy that you will be spending. I think it probably takes like a day of work in the week,
Mm.
which gets like split into, for instance, making like social media posts over the week, or even if you schedule them, you still need to schedule them at some point into your tool. trying to figure out what's the topic of the next video, or write the script, record the voice, make the animated code, assemble it. So I try to limit it and bound the effort that I make. Also, what I try to do is, for instance, last year I used to make one newsletter every week because I wanted to really get that started. Now this year, sometimes I've skipped a few weeks. For instance, if I'm not, if I don't have time, or I don't have a clear idea, I'm not going to force myself, or I'm not going to go to bed at 2 a.m. because I need to finish the newsletter. For instance, like I'm going to the US next week.
Okay.
When I will get back, there won't be a newsletter on the following Monday because I will probably be tired, and just it's not worth spending the Sunday and working on it if I'm a bit tired and there is no clear reason to do it. So I try to have like the minimum schedule of I want to release a video every week. Sometimes I take like 1 week of a pause at the end of the year, but I try to keep that, because I feel like if I can keep that momentum, I'm doing good. And I have some videos in advance, of course. And the rest, I try to add things on top. But for instance, if during a week I don't have time to do a live stream, I don't have time to do something else, I don't do it. If I don't have a good idea, also I try to not do it. But often if I don't do it and I don't have an idea, I will be like, okay, but I mean, it's a sign that I should try to explore new stuff, and then ideas will come, or I will be like, okay, I'm gonna try something new. We'll see how it works, but at least there will be the interest of trying something new that makes it so much easier to get into starting to write the content. And there's also one advantage, is that when you've reached some kind of a critical mass in your audience, you know that your content is going to be seen by a large amount of people. Like I send an email, it gets sent as of when we record to 3.5 thousand people. So you're like, okay, it means that there will be more than 3,000 people who will be starting their work week, and that will have an email from me in their inbox on Monday morning. So
Yes.
there is an impact, and it makes it, you know, that it's like it's worth your while. Like you're not trying to do something and then you put it out there and maybe it gets ignored. It's not that. Like the baseline has been raised quite a bit, and basically like a normal email today is what I would have considered a success, for instance, 1 year ago. So it's important to keep that in mind. It's very like it's a very like human behavior. Like you move into a new apartment, you're like, wow, this is amazing, it's so much better than the previous one. And then after 3 months, it's your apartment. The typical example I always have is like you buy a big TV, it's amazing for 3 weeks, and then you get used to it, and it's when you come back from being on vacation that you're like, oh wow, it's true that it's so huge.
Yes.
You know, like so it's the same thing. Exactly, it's the same thing with everything. So you get used to it. It's good because it's arguably one of the reasons why humans have had such an amazing growth, technologically, economically, and everything. But it's also good to keep it in mind that sometimes like your brain can play a bit against you, and to be like even limited efforts deliver a good result. And you don't have to keep growing your efforts. The goal would be more to keep the amount of effort that you put constant, but you will have some kind of lever effect that will make that your effort will be more impactful. And this lever effect can be you get more efficient, you get better at finding ideas, but simply the fact that your audience size grows is also a lever effect in itself.
Yes, great. I think you remember me a great book that I read some years ago. It's Atomic Habits. When you have atomic habits, you can balance. You can really handle your role as iOS developer, as content creation, etc. Keep consistently, etc. Can have a great impact on your audience and your content creation process. I think that everything enter in the scope of personal branding. we make a content creation okay for because we like iOS, we like sharing our knowledge, etc. But also we have some purpose for that, personal branding, etc. And I think that personal brand come now, especially this year and last year. Every Many people spoke and speak also about personal branding. What are your thoughts on the importance of personal branding for developers, especially today in competitive tech landscape? You are very we live in an area of very concurrency between developers to get to be in the great company like Photoroom, like Google, like Sephora or so as I work. And what do you think about that?
So yeah, personal branding, the word I would use to describe it would be more opportunity, in the sense that it's something that up until like 10 years ago used to be reserved for people who had huge like means, whether financial, in their network, but it was something for like the heads of large companies. You had to rely on some kind of structure. For instance, like in France, if you try to think about the people who did personal branding back in the 80s and 90s, the names that will come to mind will be people like Bernard Tapie, for
Okay.
instance. There was the show on Netflix, and if you watch
Yes.
it, you see that it's exactly what people do today on LinkedIn, but with the technological means
Yes. Yes.
of back then, especially in
Okay.
the first episodes. People like the head of the supermarket chain Leclerc also was doing that a
Mm.
lot. Now he does it on LinkedIn, but back then he was doing it with magazines. But it would be you needed to be like someone already controlling a huge like a resource, whether it's a company, whether I don't know, it's a research laboratory, but it couldn't be a random person.
Okay.
And now with social media, it happens that anyone can basically try to build the same kind of brand. So that's why I would use the word opportunity, because it's quite rare when you think about it that something that was only available to a select few becomes potentially available to everyone.
Mm.
It's like if anyone could live into the best neighborhood of Paris. And that's not something that happened. So it shows like how the potential that there is. I think it also shows why there are so many people trying to do it one way or the other.
Okay.
Personally, I would say it's a good thing, in the sense that it gives you independence, and it makes you less dependent on who you work for.
Mm.
I don't want to phrase it in a way where I know there is a lot of debate where people put it in opposition,
Mm.
especially in France. There is a lot of debate of
Yes.
either you work for a company or you are a freelancer. I don't believe that the opposition is the most efficient way to see it. I see
Mm.
it more as it's a way to build something for you,
Mm.
and but it doesn't mean that you have to oppose it with like working with a company or whatever.
Or
I work at Photoroom, and I've been working there for 2 years, and I'm still very happy to work there. And I've been developing my own content at the same time, and I really don't see them as two things that compete with each
okay.
other. I don't see it as, okay, if I get as much of a following, I will be able to stop my day job and do something else. I see them more as two things that work together, that work alongside. But yeah, I think for a developer, it's a good way to build some kind of a safety net, in the sense
Mm.
that people will know about you, and you won't depend on your current employer. Because let's imagine that I don't have any personal branding,
Okay.
and you see my profile, you see, okay, I work for Photoroom, Photoroom, the company. So you're like, okay, I guess this must be a good engineer. But what's happening is that you have some kind of a halo effect, that it's the brand of my current employer that basically influences how you perceive me.
Yes.
So when the brand is great, like Photoroom, it's amazing. If it's a random service company in France, it goes in the other direction. Like it
Yes.
cuts both ways, basically. So I would say it's very interesting personal branding when you work for a company that doesn't have a strong brand, at least in the sense that when you see an engineer working there, you're not like, oh, okay, this must be someone that is amazing. Companies that have this strong brand is typically, especially when I was graduating 10 years ago, like Google, Facebook, if you had made it there, it was kind of like getting like a degree in a way.
Okay.
So I would say, yeah, it's a great way to build your image and not depend on the quality of the brand of your employer. Personally, I wouldn't recommend to sit in opposition. Unfortunately, it can happen in some companies that the company will see it as something that's a threat. Unfortunately, there are still companies like that, so it's something to be aware of. But in companies that are healthy, they are smart enough to see that there is an interest for the two of it.
Two sides.
And exactly.
Yes. For the two sides, generally it's depend of the culture of the company, etc., and also the culture of the mindset of the developer. Because when you are a good developer, when you have a good developer at your mindset and at your skills, etc., you will be in the good company. You will
Yeah, exactly.
generally like that, but not all the people have this opportunity. For that, you need to make personal branding to be discovered by people, know how Vincent work, how Walid make things, etc. It's not you are not for sure the great developer for all times, because you make content, etc. But it help you. I think
Yeah,
that
exactly.
it help you. Yes.
Exactly. It's just like, I mean, branding, it's when you're in the supermarket and you don't know which product you pick one, maybe
Yes.
because you remember that you've seen the brand in some commercial. Or also, one of the reasons of branding, maybe I'm saying a mistake, but the story I've seen is that one of the reasons why brands were established, and I'm thinking more about, like, for instance, like a restaurant chains. The story I've read is that it's when in the US the train line started to be created and people could travel large distances. And when people arrive somewhere, which restaurant do I go to? I don't know any of the restaurants.
Yes.
And the brand help you to get a sense of that. Actually, I can give a great example to be able to really relate to it. Is if you go to a foreign country, doesn't have to be very far away. Just go a country outside of France and try to buy some bottled water. It's gonna feel weird because the brands for bottled water, they are almost always national, because they always refer to a landmark in the country. And when you want to buy bottled water in a foreign country, and I had this experience last year at the airport of Amsterdam,
Okay.
you don't know any of the brands, and you're never sure. Like, you're like, is it really bottled water? Or is it something with sugar added? Is it like flat, or does it have bubbles? You're never sure, and you have to ask the guy to be like, is this
Okay.
water? And in France, if you go to see the guy, you point to Evian, you're like, is this water? You would feel stupid, but that's because everyone knows the brand. But when you're confronted with bottles of water and you don't know any of the brands, it feels weird. It's the same thing if you're confronted with several developers' profile, but you don't know any of them. But if there is one that you know, even if, like, you don't know it that well, but it creates a sense of familiarity and a sense of reassurance. So I would say it's that branding. It's trying to say, I've seen it before. It's why in France you don't see it now, because it feels very old. But there used to be the little wording that says "vu à la télé," seen on TV.
Yes.
Because if you have some products, the one that was seen on TV, there was the sense that, okay, if they can pay for a commercial and the TV agreed to broadcast it, then it's not a scam. It won't poison me. So it's really this idea of creating a sense of reassurance, and people can be like, okay, yes, I've seen it before. People interact with his content. They like it. It creates some social proof, and it lowers the risk of moving further with that person.
Okay, great. That come for the importance of personal branding. I think that people that listen or see us now have a lot of question about your advices for people who now are convinced to make a content to make personal branding. What advise you to start the because I think that difficult is how to start make creation, how to start be visible to simplify.
Yes. Yes. So to start, I would say, and I think it's going to be the same thing that I might have mentioned before. It's stay simple. Done is better than perfect. You need to accept that the first pieces of content that you will put out there will not be that great. Unfortunately, they will also have to be public, because that's the game of content creation. You can
Yes.
look on my YouTube channels. The first videos, they are not great at all. There are many things that could have been much better, but still they had to be put out there because they were part of this journey. So I would say, try to find something simple. Try to find something that, for instance, I don't know, like we are in May. So May is a time in France where there are a lot of days off.
Yes.
You have a 2-day or 3 days weekend. Try to say, okay, I want to have my first piece of content ready by the end of this weekend, and I try to do something that I can make back then. And yes, at some point, for instance, if you want to make videos, there will be a point where you will have to turn the camera on, record something. It might not be that great, but you still need to put it out there and see how it goes. I would really say that stay simple, both in the ID, on the gear that you use. Also, today I think you're using an iPhone to record yourself. With the
Yes.
continuity camera, the iPhone is surprisingly good. As long as you use
Yes.
natural light, like you're doing, the iPhone does a great job. So you can buy a little stand to put your iPhone on the screen of your laptop or your desktop monitor, and you have your camera. So if you have an iPhone and the recent one, you don't need to buy a camera. The
Yes.
sound is very important, but for the sound, there is a trick. It's to buy the earpods with the wire, so that you plug in
Okay.
into the jack, for instance, of your laptop. This gives a surprisingly good sound, much better than that of AirPods, and it costs like $20 at the Apple Store.
Okay.
So an iPhone and the wired earpods, and that's it. You actually already have your stuff, and you have your gear, and then you can get started. And then it's about finding a topic. So it can be, I would say, try to find something very simple. It can be something, how to a refactor that you did at work that worked well. Try to find something where you don't need a lot of context in order to understand it. So something that people can pick up, and you don't need to do an introduction that is complex. So that's why things about Swift work so well. Something maybe where there is a sense of a before after also, because to have a strong but simple outline. And the strong and simple outlines, there are not that many of them. You have the before after, you have the do something in X steps, in 3 steps, in 5 steps. Do something, get a result in less than 60 seconds, in less than 90 seconds. It can be also tips to use a software, like your 4 or your 3 favorite tips in Xcode. You do that and you record them with nice videos that you turn into GIFs. You already have a good piece of content there. So it can be also, I know there are a lot of people in France and LinkedIn talking about that, like the explorator approach, where you're like, okay, I've tried to learn this. Here is what I took away from it. I've tried it a few times, like when there are frameworks announced, do a live stream. Let's explore and discover Swift data, TipKit, other things like that. And
Okay.
then I send an email. Okay, I've spent 2 hours exploring the framework live with the audience. Here are the top 3 things that I've understood, that I've liked, that I think are worth looking into. Whatever it is, as long as it gets you like excited, it's fine. I would say.
Yes. I think also maybe begin by writing some by blogging, write some
Yeah,
articles, etc. For something that maybe you say that you think
yeah,
that people know. I know that in 2020 I began by write something in Medium about delegates,
yeah.
closures,
Exactly,
etc. Simple
exactly,
thing, etc. How it
exactly.
work. But sometimes I speak about TDD, BDD, etc. But I think, oh no. Keep simple, Walid. Don't make things
Yeah,
because okay, maybe people like person speak about TDD, BDD, etc. I want to listen but I think also speaking about something in Swift, something in Swift UI, simple, something in basic. I think that a lot of senior developers, uh, I have a lot of problem with basic thing in Swift. I think that begin by that, make thing with the basics, and maybe fair, maybe doing things like in Swift data observation, observable, macro, etc., which I think are very high level topics. You don't need to make
yeah.
content about that.
Exactly.
Okay.
And maybe I would mention 2 things for 2 big caveats to avoid. If you want to do blogging, don't spend time setting up your blog. It can take so much time and it's not worth
Okay.
it. So either use a platform like Medium, for instance, or just like you can do long posts on Twitter now. You can put articles on LinkedIn. My website, it's a Squarespace. I didn't try to write any code for it. So really, like when you're a developer, it can be a big caveat, but I would say there is almost no value to building your own technical stack for a blog, especially when you're starting. And the second one is to always think in terms of the audience. Try to think about what the audience will learn, and try to keep in mind that the content is for the audience and not for yourself. I'm
Hmm.
saying this because it's a mistake that can happen. I've seen people trying to put out content and they talk about like their journey and things like that. And I'm sure it feels very interesting to them.
Yes.
But the reality is that a random person telling you about their lives, it feels very weird. Imagine if that person were to talk to you at the end of an event and being like, oh, in my life I've done this and that. It would feel so weird. So don't do this kind of, I would say, self-centered content. Think more about what you're going to teach the audience. A good way to feel the difference is think about, for instance, if someone is to make a vlog, for instance, you can
Okay.
have 2 kinds of vlogs. People will be like, so I went to this city and I've seen this thing. It's so cool because
Yes.
of this, because of that. And then you're gonna have the vlog which starts with a 1 minute introduction of the people waiting at the airport on a very like smooth music, and it's really the person like putting themselves forward than trying to do anything else for the audience. And don't fall into this trap of doing something that's about you. It's not the goal. The content should always be about what you will teach to the audience. And if you do that well, then over time the audience will remember you, and you will build that brand. But that brand will be built as like it will be a secondary. It
Hmm.
will not be the primary.
Okay, great, great advice for people. I think that we come to the end of our discussion, our podcast. Before that, I have a question, a funny question.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people send you a message, direct message, etc. About have you maybe a memorable experience with people who sent you some message, etc., about advices and how impact your content creation after that. I think that many people advise you, etc. If you have a memorable experience that you can share with us, it can be funny things.
Yeah, I think something memorable was, so I started doing content creation during COVID, during lockdowns. So when you
Okay.
would not interact with the actual audience a lot, and something that was quite memorable was when I went. So back then it was still called French Kids, so the big iOS French conference in September 2022, and I met viewers and people who were in the process of switching careers, and they used the videos to support them in that effort. And it shows like the impact that the videos can have, and that behind like the number that you see on YouTube, like the audience, the analytics, and everything like that, you have real people, and you can help them in effort that can be like life changing for them, like people that went from jobs that could be very like physical, demanding physically, to jobs that were much better paid, and they were just feeling much they were just having a much better quality of life. So seeing that you can have an impact on that had also an impact on me, on my choices, and that's when I decided to also make content that would be able to even more help people who are doing this transition from one career to another. So I would say that there was that. Now, these days, unfortunately, it has more reached the point where answering DMs is very challenging.
Hmm.
If someone sends me a DM on LinkedIn, I'm so sorry, but it's very likely that I will never answer it, because there are too many of them, and it's either making the content or answering the DMs at this point. So unfortunately, it's become very challenging. But yeah, it's more, I would say, more, I guess, in the real life interactions, because it shows the contrast that you can see that you've made like 10,000 views, but when you have one person that tells you, oh, I've seen the videos and it had this impact, then like it feels very different. So I guess for me it's more like the real life interactions, which are very nice, because it shows that when you're doing stuff, it has an impact, and you benefit, like I benefit positively from the content. But you can get the sense that, okay, yes, I benefit from it, but it also had some positive effect. And so it's like it's not like you can be like, okay, I didn't steal anything. Like, yes, I got some opportunities, but I also like gave back, and it's still like the relationship is still healthy.
Yes, great, 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 memorable experience. And I think that help many people in this part. We come now for the last question. Going ahead, looking ahead, what your goals, both in your career as a iOS as a software developer, and also in your content creation? What's your perspective in Vincent?
Yeah, good question. So I always say, like, one of the ways that I also see content creation is that it's something that's going to bring opportunities.
Hmm.
So it's always hard to know what will be the next step, because, for instance, if you had asked me 2 years ago, 2 years ago, I wouldn't have heard from Photoroom. I mean, 2.5 years ago, I wouldn't have heard from Photoroom. So that brought, like, content creation in a way brought this opportunity. Sorry, brought this opportunity, and the day before you're not aware of it. The day after,
Okay.
it has like skewed you into a new direction. So I would say, like, there will be things that will be coming. I don't know which. As I've told you, I mentioned it quickly, but I've told you when we were preparing, like, I'm going to San Francisco
Okay.
next week. So actually, by the time we release the podcast, probably I will either be there or have come
Okay.
back. But
Right.
of course, there is a density of people there that you meet. So this could
Mhm.
open up also like the ways for like something on the content creation side. I don't know. So things will happen. I try to stay open. I often try to say that every 6 months in average, there is something that happens that unlocks a new stage of growth, a new direction. For now, I don't have anything clear in mind.
Okay.
To be honest, I've been at Photoroom for 2 years, and I still intend to stay there for some time. So it's the passage that I can clip that and send it to work. Like I said it live. But no, honestly, I don't do iOS now day to day at Photoroom. I work on other topics, but that's one of the good things when you work in a company that has a lot of growth, is that growth
Yes.
comes with opportunities. So I don't have a plan for the future, but my strategy is to not have a plan, but also because this way, the day there is an opportunity, you're able to welcome it. Because sometimes you can see people that they have like 5 years plan, and one day there is an opportunity that's amazing, but since it
Yes.
doesn't fit in the plan, they don't look at it, or they see it as a threat or whatever. So trying to stay open, like you don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow.
Yes.
We'll see what happens. As long as I keep doing things that I find interesting and I get to make a living out of it, that's already great. Like I think, I mean, if you look at the number, what I have today, if you put it like in how like the different kind of job that you can have in France. For instance, having a job at Photoroom, it's one of the best jobs I think you can get in tech in France. It's hard to
Yes.
think of a better one. You
Yes.
have the Google and stuff, but it's a very different day-to-day job, so not really comparable. So
Yes.
honestly, no, I'm pretty happy with what I have. When you have an audience and you release videos, you always want to, of course, get better numbers. Like your videos makes 2,000 views. I don't know. You have two ways of seeing it. You can be like, oh, that's amazing, or you can be like, oh, what was missing to get to 4,000, for instance.
Yes.
So I try to like keep making better content that appeals more to the audience, like finding cool ideas that I'm excited about. I'm gonna try to bring back a Vision Pro from the
Yes.
US.
Great.
We'll see if my payment card goes through
Okay.
or not. That's the
Yes.
limiting factor, basically.
Yes.
I have no control over it, so we'll see.
Okay.
It will be the universe telling me whether I can get it before it. Worst case, I think it's gonna be released in France in the summer or in September, so it won't be too bad if I can get it. But
Yes. Yesterday I spoke with the person in the Apple when I leave, they say there is no vision in France now for the Vision OS. They
yeah,
have, but I think maybe in September, maybe in the summer, like you
yeah, they
say.
were saying that the people in the Apple stores would get some training
Yes.
in June or July. I think July.
Okay.
And when they looked in the US, they trained them in December for a release in January. So it
Okay.
was aiming
Great.
at a release maybe in August or September. So yeah, we'll see. But I think me, as long as I manage to put out content that I like putting out, and I believe that it has like a positive impact on people, it's fine with me, and we'll see where that gets me.
Okay. Thank you, Vincent. It was really a great podcast. The first in English for me, because the last 3 episodes was in French with Jérôme, with Franck, with Audrey, which was a very, very great episode also. Thank you very much, and see you quickly. See you.
Yeah,
Hello.
thank you, Walid. I think you did
Thank
a great
you.
job. Thank you for having me, and
Okay.
yeah, see you next time.
See you next time. Thank you. Hello.